So now I'd like to introduce our moderator. Jessie Steigerwald is the president of LexSeeHer, an all-volunteer community nonprofit whose mission it is to make women visible. Jessie is also a town meeting member from Precinct 8 and served on the school committee for 9 years. LexSeeHer has advocated for and gained approval for a new monument that will be the first to recognize Lexington women's contributions across time. LexSeeHer has also partnered with Lexington Girl Scouts to create the women's visibility banners, which we had at the library a little bit ago. Jessie, welcome, and I will now pass this off to you to host and introduce our special guests.
Great. Thank you so much, Susan. Thank you to the library and to the foundation for making this event possible. Thank you to those who are listening to this recording. We're really excited at LexSeeHer to have a speaker series where we can explore not only different topics, but also document some of the amazing women in our community right now. And today's event is wonderful because both Binita Dang and Kathy Fields are here with us in person. They are two of our living legends. They are two people who were nominated and were selected as honorees for the 2022 Women's Visibility Banners. Those banners were, as Susan mentioned, on display at Cary Library. And in the spring, as soon as Streetscape is wrapped up, we will look forward to seeing those banners on Massachusetts Avenue right here in the center of town. So I'm going to tell you about the format. We're going to spend a little time talking to Binita, and then we'll spend some time talking to Kathy. And then the three of us will join together for a broader conversation. This is a lovely group of people here today. And so please, as we reach that part, as you have questions or even comments or memories you'd like to share, please feel free to raise your hand in the Zoom room or on screen, and Susan will welcome you to be part of the conversation as well. Today's theme is really about celebrating community. We always start with a quick update on the LexSeeHer monument. The monument has been approved by the select board unanimously. They voted in July, and we knew that it would be about 18 months from an approval to installation. So we met with the town manager this week, and we're excited to be looking forward to announcing an unveiling date. It'll probably be the spring of 2024, and we're working on what month and day it will be. You know how it is in New England in the spring. It can be a little cold in the ground. So we'll look forward to it. What we want to think about today is how women have contributed to building community over the more than 300 years of our town's history. And I can't think of two better people to bring together today than Binita and Kathy. Binita began a radio show program with her husband and ran it for decades. And to pass it on, we'll learn more about how her sons became involved. So let's welcome Binita. Binita, we're very excited to have you here.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here too.
Congratulations on being both nominated and also selected and then immortalized by the Lexington Girl Scouts with your silhouette on a banner. We're just a little round of silent applause on screen from all of us. Really glad that you're here. We'd love to dive in and think more about Sounds of India. Some people know the program, and for some people it's new. It's a radio program that you organized for literally more than 2 decades. So can you tell us just an overview of what the program was like?
Okay, Sounds of India has been in existence for 40 years. Me and my husband started it. We needed to do something. There was a need to connect with the community at large. There was no internet, there was no Facebook, no Google. So the only way to connect with a very small Indian American community was through radio. We started a small show, half-hour show. Few of our Indian businesses that were there sponsored, so that could pay for that half-hour show. And then businesses started growing. We had banks, we had attorneys and car dealership, and all these businesses thrived through our radio programming. And we feel good that we could help the community at large. And we were not real broadcasters, but we tried to entertain, give information, and help the community know what's happening at MIT, at Harvard, in Cambridge, Kendall Square through the radio. And we managed it very well, very well. And that experience, me and my husband will carry with us for many, many years.
So you've really been able to weave together so many different people who wouldn't have otherwise met each other. So I'd love to go back to the very beginning when you were first starting. Like, do you remember your first show and how you thought about who were your first guests going to be?
Yes, we didn't have too many guests at our first show. We just tried to call a few of the Indian businesses that were just starting. One of the first ones in Belmont, India Tea and Spices, a grocery store. Then there was a sari and appliance store on Mass Avenue in Arlington. And there was another insurance agent that, then they helped build up the radio program as people started knowing, and we would give them news of where a movie is going to be held. It used to be held in MIT room 26100. And sometimes, the reels would not reach in time and they would bring another movie and people would come to see one movie and the reel is of another movie. They would get disappointed and go home. So our radio helped in reaching out with the right information.
Now,
And,
it's it's so interesting. There's a big India Film Festival that I've seen now, and it's been on display at like the Institute of Contemporary Arts. It seems like in the greater Boston area, there's really been a wonderful blossoming of immigration from India to our area.
yes, Lord, the Indian community has grown by leaps and bounds. There's so many, even in the town itself in Lexington, you can see the kids in the high school, in the elementary school and the middle school, so many Indian parents, Indian children, because Lexington has a rich culture, heritage, and of course, education is primary importance here. So,
And we know that you're being humble, but that the radio show really helped because people heard about it. Many people have been so impressed by you and your family, and it made Lexington be perceived as a place that would be welcoming and intelligent, but open to community. I wonder, when you have shared about different arts, you've talked about music and other art forms. Have you had musical guests that really stand out?
yes, as the radio program was becoming more vibrant and we were making some money in that little small business that I was running on every Sunday morning, we brought live concerts of playback singers from Bollywood, the top ones, and that we used to do it at Lowell Memorial Auditorium and did it for 15, 20 years. And then came the advent of YouTube and all these things that nobody wanted to go to a show per se. They could hear it on YouTube, but we did live shows for many, many years.
No, live things don't always go the way you planned. Anyone who's been to a Zoom during the pandemic knows you can have a dog bark or a doorbell rings. What kinds of production skills did you develop? Because as you mentioned, you didn't start out to be a radio producer when you were a young girl. So how did you manage that?
Yeah, my husband is an architect, so he, right now he's a financial field right now, but he was an architect, so he would design the hall and then do the seating arrangements, and this price goes there and this price goes there, and we worked out and we used to get crowds of 2,000, 2,500 people, because in India you are hungry for these things that happens every day in India. Big theaters have big singers come in and perform for you. But here, whatever we did, all people were hungry and we caught their need in time and tried to satisfy as much as we could with the musical, the hunger which was in them. And they would come flock to the shows and we loved doing it. But then there came a time when not too many people would come to the shows, but we did it for 40 years. 40 years. And my two little boys, they were young then, 14 and 12. They brought in the new era of new Bollywood songs, like the disco songs, this event songs, and this. We played music from the golden era, 60s and 70s. They used to play the movie songs from 80s and 90s. And then slowly their interest waned and they just left the show. But me and my husband kept doing it. Yeah, then we used to have attorneys as our guests. And we used to have a segment of 10 minutes in that 1 hour show where we would have the attorneys, the car dealership, insurance agents, banks. So they used the radio to increase their business and get known in the community, because radio was the only communicating toy out there, so we used it.
I read that you had as one of your special guests an immigration attorney where people could ask for information about immigration.
Yeah, attorney Peter Allen. Yeah, he was with us for at least 15, 20 years. Yes.
And when we think about, like, immigration has changed so much, and in the last 20 years, we've seen people, either being warm and welcoming or being really hostile towards immigrants. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, how you saw, the radio show listeners change in their questions. Do you feel like things stay the same? Do you feel like people kind of got the hang of what they needed to know about immigration and could pass it on to friends?
Yeah, we used to have an honorary consulate in Boston, Indian honorary consulate, and that they helped with process the visas and the passports. And that helped people. At least you could get a visa form right here in Boston and you could mail it, and things are better now. But immigration is a very, very difficult, and it's a prolonged process. Now to get a visa, it takes like 16 to 18 months. There are visas on arrivals. Like if you have an American passport, you can go and get a visa on arrival and stay there in India for 4 weeks, 6 weeks. But things are very different now since that whatever happened in 2004. Things are very, very, you have to be very cautious now. And I like the way in America, you are so that you have to have the proper documents. You just can't wiggle your way and just go wherever you want to go.
And
So,
did you grow up in America?
no, I was 22 when I came here. So I had my education and all. My husband was a Harvard student. He went home to get married. Then I came and we stayed here, made America our adopted country.
Well,
and I had my kids.
we're awfully glad you did. So I want to say hello to Kathy now, and then we'll have Binita back just shortly. Thank you so much, Binita, for starting us off. Good morning, Kathy. Hello. And for listeners, I'm sure everyone is familiar with Kathy, but if you're not, Kathy was nominated for her outstanding long service in the community, not only for being in town meeting and part of the Retailers Association, but especially for bringing this incredibly bright sunshine glow to one of our center businesses, Crafty Yankee. And Kathy, so many of us have our own personal memories and stories about Crafty Yankee. I know I will talk about some of mine. But first, in case someone didn't know, can you just share in your own words a little overview of what Crafty Yankee has been?
Wow. Okay. I guess I have to back up just a little bit because I've spent my entire life in retail since I was 16 years old, wrapping Christmas gifts at Sears. And being most of my life, the early part of my life in corporate department stores, it was such a change and a thrill to be able to marry a man from Lexington, decide that we're going to live here. And here was this wonderful store that Carla Fortman and Dottie Simpson wanted to turn over to someone else. And Carla Fortman, I believe, is another one of your honorees. And they welcomed me and told me everything about their heritage of the store, but knew that in order for it to be successful, it needed to change. And it was a kind of scary, but it was the first time I was going to get to run my own business. It was an opportunity also for me to meet people in the community because I hadn't raised a child here. My husband's daughter, Allison, graduated from Lexington High School. And at that point, that's when we got married. The only way to meet people was through the store, through different committees that I got on, the Chamber of Commerce, Lexington Center Committee, and the other ones that you mentioned. But Crafty Yankee, even at that point, was this gem right in the center next to the library. And people came in all day long, regular neighborhood customers, people in all the surrounding towns, and busloads and carloads of tourists. So quickly, I had to learn a lot about the history of the town and who the people were that could help me learn. But it was exciting. And I think my goal was that I wanted this store to be, and I called it kind of affectionately, the 3 C's: the craftsperson, the community, and the customer. And being able to meet these talented, artistic men and women who really had skills, but they didn't know how to market. They didn't know how to price, how to bring in a whole selection of items, whether it be jewelry or pottery or quilts. And so for me, with all of my department store background, I was able to add the structure and the financial part to that, but they bought the life and the soul to the products. As far as the community was just so good to me. And maybe it's because I am a social person. I wanted to get to know people. I loved mentoring the other businesses that would come into town, whether it would be, a smaller store or someone a little bit bigger. They still didn't quite know how to navigate what the different systems were. How do I get a new sign? How do I participate in some of these events when I don't even think somebody has asked me? And even though Lexington has always had town economic development people, they are just so involved in so many things that to all the way reach down in the trenches with the smaller businesses, it just wasn't as easy for them. And I took to it like a duck to water. I never saw any of these other businesses as competition to me. I felt like we each enhanced one another. And the stronger that each one of our businesses was, the stronger our center was going to be and the more welcoming.
It's shown through, and people who speak about you and the many different ways which we're going to unpack that you've contributed, it comes up on the top of the things people love about you, that you were willing to welcome new businesses. So many new business people have said, Kathy really helped me get started. And it's interesting because those of us who've ever traveled anywhere outside of Lexington, when you go to visit a different town, it's true. You don't go to one store only and then run back home. You're going to browse and go up and down the street. So if it's an attractive store and there's another attractive store, you're just going to linger longer. I think linger in Lexington was one of our lovely catchphrases for a while. I'd love to think a little bit more about what you were sharing, in that you had this retail experience in the past in very different settings, like a Sears. I mean, raise your hand on the screen. How many of us remember the wrapping station at Sears? I think many of us remember you pick, do you want number 2 or number 3 with the bow or the other bow? And seriously, Crafty Yankee always wraps things more beautifully than anybody. What kinds of things do you think were strategies you learned from outside that fit really well in having a local shop? And are there strategies where they really they couldn't work in a smaller retail center that needs to be much more interpersonal with customers?
I think the strategy that works the best, or has always worked for me, is to be a good listener. And when a customer comes into your store, they come in for many reasons, but they wouldn't have come in the front door if there wasn't something in the window or something that maybe it was the category that made them know that this is a place I'd like to walk into. And being able to welcome people, but not follow them around. People came in and they wanted to look and linger. And if you were good at being a welcoming sales associate or a welcoming owner, you'd start to chat with them. Hi, I'm trying to think, what brings you here today? Not, may I help you? Every time I heard someone, may I help you, I wanted to cringe, because they didn't want help. They wanted information, and they wanted to touch, and they wanted to learn about the products and the artisans, and how was this made? So this is much easier to do in a small store where you really have one-on-one contact. Not so easy in a larger organization. feel like I haven't answered all that question.
No, no, it's really helpful because I'm picturing the store in my head and thinking about how it's true as a customer, you could come and look over at the right by the mantelpiece and be thinking about why you came in, but then you might notice something over there that was kind of sparkly and you wanted to look at for yourself, and having the freedom to browse and yes, not have anyone like try to shop for you is really important.
One of the successes also, Jesse, is that I was just so fortunate in the people I was able to entice to work with us. It was a wonderful team. For the last 17 years, when I was there, I had a manager, Sandy Simon, who really became the face of the store. And between Sandy and her coaching of the other sales associates, they got to know the customers. And when they would come back from a trip, they would, did you, they knew where they were going or who they bought that gift for. So that personal memorability and engagement continued to make the store successful. So it really was all about the people.
You also, though, as you said earlier, and something we want to bring out today is you wove together these artisans. I am wearing right now a necklace that I hope people can see, which was specifically your idea, Kathy. When the town celebrated the 300th anniversary, I went in and talked to Kathy about like, what can we do? What might we have that people could have as a really special souvenir for this really, once in a town's history celebration? And it was amazing just watching you kind of go through all the different things that are out there. And you suggested that maybe there could be this little silver 3-corner hat that says 300th anniversary on it. But you have many artists who you've woven into the shop and really helped them come out. How did you begin? Did you start already knowing some artists, or how did you cultivate that circle?
I think, again, going back to the fact that Carla Fortman and Dottie Simpson lived in the town, and they started the business as a holiday crafts fair in Carla's house, which came to the center and ended up being in that store. And so people, especially, I guess I'm going to say Jill O'Reilly, who was our silversmith, but getting to meet her, and through her getting to meet some of the other Lexington artists, I would bring them to my house. We'd sit around, we'd have coffee, and they would tell me, you're interviewing me. I felt like I was interviewing them and learning all about what made them tick or how they got into pottery or fiber arts, or in the case of jewelry. And that's, I guess, the soul of the store.
It also is, I think, something special when you're going shopping and you want something unique. It's not so easy to find that at the mall. Sure. And going into a shop where you're finding something, I mean, Jill is the next person I was going to talk about. Jill did a line of stone wall themed jewelry that you can't buy anywhere else in the world. That's it. One place. And it means if you visit here, you get to pick out something to take home with you that is truly one of a kind. That seems very rare, and yet your store had so many different options. Something someone said to me is, Kathy had this unique position because all those tour buses came in. You got to see how people across the country and the world saw Lexington. I'm wondering what that was like, meeting so many people from different places actually up close. We all walk through the center and see the tour buses, but you actually got to chat with people. What kind of takeaways did you have?
Wow. I think people would get off that bus and they would start to walk down the street. And because the front of the Crafty Yankee, which I did not do this, but I got to enjoy it, had these 2 benches. And usually the men, the dads, whatever, would sit outside and the women would come in. And you could just see their eyes light up. They usually were with 1 or 2 other people, and they would start to chat about something that they would see. And so it was fun to go over and engage with them and tell them a little story about what they were looking at, which you can immediately turn around and say, do you have somebody special who has a birthday coming up or a holiday or a grandchild? Let me show you this, and then tell them the story. So I think people liked the fact that they were going to bring something home from Lexington, but the town to them just was quintessential New England.
It really is. And I think capturing capturing things, whether it's in jewelry or in household goods. You had lovely cutting boards, all the different ways that you can show a New England feel, whether it's the choice of wood or the beautiful hand knit things. The other person I really wanted to bring out today was Shirley Lane, who is someone who knit beautiful, beautiful, delicate, tiny little stitch baby clothing. And I wondered if you could share the story of how she ended up having items in your shop.
Okay. Well, Shirley was already making things for the store, but not very many. And so once I could sit down with her and have her show me what she most loved to do, and it was the sweaters that had the little owls across the front and the Christmas stockings. So the sweaters would be in pink and blue and yellow and white. And when I was able to show her that once we could sell this sweater, we could also sell a teddy bear with it, because when the child outgrew the sweater, it was tomorrow's heirloom. And you didn't want the sweater to disappear, and you didn't necessarily want it to be given to someone who wouldn't appreciate who she was. So we had tags made about the sweaters, and then we showed them how it would fit on a teddy bear once it wasn't fitting the baby anymore. And then the holiday stockings, people would start ordering them like in February for the year to come up. And there were people that would come in and they'd send me pictures or show me pictures of their mantle. And every single child, and then teenagers and adults, had the stockings with the names embroidered on them. And there was always an argument over, well, who was going to get the red snowman and who was going to get the blue snowman? And she did so much for this town. I miss her. And the fact that she lived really down the street on Waltham Street, she would come in almost every other day, and we could just sit and talk and reminisce. So she's a treasure.
I thought it would be really nice to weave her in because she fit in the store. And for those who are listening, Shirley Lane is also one of the 2022 Women's Visibility Banner honorees. And so it's just nice to bring her into our circle today. And for those who haven't heard about her yet, there will be opportunities to learn more about Shirley another morning. So I thought now we could bring Binita and Kathy both on screen, because some of the questions that I have, and please, as we're doing this part, as you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat bar so you don't forget them as they pop up. And we can then also just, recognize people to ask their question. Something that in pairing you two together, here's some of the thoughts that I had. One was, we've been looking and building the monument at women from the 1700s for whom we don't have any written records about their relationships, but we know in our fiber of our being that women were very important in Lexington as part of the community, that they had neighbors, that they were involved in economic trade, that some of them were probably seamstresses and were getting either paid for their work or trading their work for other goods that helped their family survive. So we don't have documentation of what those women were like, but we know some of them were entrepreneurial, as both of you were. So I thought we could start and just talk a little bit, we're very direct in our group, but think a little bit about, you both found things to do that are paid jobs, that are work. And I think, Binita, maybe starting with you first, for the radio show, I'm sure you had to make a decision about how would you turn this into a business. You could have a radio show as a WGBH type public TV, not-for-profit situation, or you could be paid for your work. So can we talk a little bit about how you made that decision and how, if that influenced either the content or your strategies as you went forward? It sounds like it was important because you had sponsors that really became an integral part of the show, but we would love to hear your thinking on that as you look back at the beginning and how the show grew.
It started as purely entertainment for the Indian American community. But we used to put a lot of time every Sunday morning, make the script, select the LPs and the EPs, and CDs came in later. But in the beginning, it was long playing records and RPMs, the small ones. And we used to buy them in India and then bring them here. So we had the original recording. And a lot of work, but as the radio program picked up, as the businesses grew, they were ready to sponsor a radio program in such a way that I could make it as a small business, Sunday morning business, 1 hour business, and then it became 2 hours, then 2 hour business, because the Indian businesses in the Indian community were also spreading their wings. There were like 2 restaurants in the beginning, then there were 30 of them in the Cambridge area, in the Lexington. We have 3 restaurants in the Lexington, okay? And then it became a business, a part-time business, small business. So me and my husband has a full-time job. I used to do Meals on Wheels on the side. This was just a weekend gig, which we used to love. And we never thought it as a business because we both enjoy Indian music so much that it helped us do the radio programming. That's how it became a business from entertainment only.
And Kathy, I'm thinking about in terms of the store, but also your role with Lexington retailers. I have a couple questions about it, but one is just if you can help us think about from a town perspective, there's so many organizations in town that are volunteer groups. You were a business that found many ways to volunteer. One of the things that really stands out for people, obviously I've chatted with people before today about both of you to learn what different people are thinking and what their questions might be. But Kathy for years had a giving tree in the store, and it allowed people to go browsing around December and pick out things to fulfill some wishes. So you found these very interesting ways to support the community as a business. What went into your thinking as you developed that tree in particular, which many people think about, and how you developed the tree over the years in the shop with what ways people could be supporting outside of the store? You go shopping and yet be helping the community.
It's a great question. When I first took over the store, I was approached by the group that was doing one of the showcase houses, where they would take over an older house in Lexington, and each designer would do a different room. And the lower level, actually the basement, they wanted to have some kind of a gift shop when people left. And it was sponsored by Minuteman Senior Services. So all of the items that were in the shop, 40% of what we sold in that basement venue went to Minuteman Senior Services. When that program was over, I sat down with the director and I said, I'm understanding more about your organization. And there are so many seniors when it comes to the holidays that are in so much need of love, and they're just less fortunate. Even though we live in an area where we think there's a fair amount of wealth, there's a lot of people who aren't so wealthy. So this is where this tree idea came up. I thought, okay, I could take a space in my shop for November and December, and the social workers could give us the names of the people. It was just a first name, like me. Sally is 92. She lives alone. She has a cat. She would love some treats for the cat, and she would love a warm, cozy robe, size large. So it went on and on and on. And the first year we had 100 names. And by the time I left the store 2 years ago, we went through 500 names. And so it was just fabulous. And also when we had the first 100 names, the gifts would come in, we would get them boxed, we'd wrap them. They were all at my house. It was crazy. Finally, it got to be where we couldn't handle that many. And we turned the last couple of years into gift cards, so that these social workers could actually take the gift cards after the holiday, go and purchase the towels or whatever people need. But that opened up my eyes to the needs in the community and platformed into other organizations. The Giving Tree is still there. The people, the couple family that took over my store are still doing that. And that means a lot to me and the community.
Well, and it's a nice transition. I'm going to pop into a question in the chat bar from Michelle. Susan, can we have Michelle ask the question?
Hi, Binita. I know that you did your show with your husband, and I'm interested in finding out if there were any differences that you had noticed being treated as a woman as opposed to how your husband was treated by on and off the show, and in behind the scenes as well as on the show.
Well, it was the idea of a radio show for the Indian community, I thought about the idea that we have to reach the people. Let's do the radio show. But my husband was the main, what do you call it? Harish Dang, Sons of India. I was sort of behind the scene, because behind the scene, the person that works behind the scene is the actual work, the thought, the thinking was all mine. But my husband has a beautiful radio voice. He can do poetry. He can do a lot of things which I can do. I could read an ad. My English is a little better than his English, but it was always Harish Dang. You guys, when you honored me with this award, my husband keeps saying, you are the unsung hero. So that makes me feel good that women are being recognized for what they are worth, Yes. Thank you so much for honoring me with that award.
Kathy, from when you started and over the years in the shop, at least from where we sit, it doesn't seem like the majority of shop owners are women. Has the number changed? Do you notice any patterns in, or do you have any thoughts about, why maybe there are fewer women, although there are some other businesses that have got up and running or tried?
I think it's very hard to make a strong living in the businesses that I'm most familiar with, which would be, the ones in the center, whether it be a service business, food business, or retail. People want to immediately talk about the rents, but the rents are not ridiculous. But we don't have the foot traffic, and in many cases, we don't have the patrons, that the residents in the town who can populate enough of the business, enough of the days of the week. And I don't want to by any means make it look like the residents don't support the stores. I think they do. There's just only so many of them and so many needs they have on any one given day, and how busy their lives are. These are very involved families that live in this town. They do a lot of philanthropic things. They have children. They're involved in their own professional lives. So to support as many diverse businesses as we try to have in the center becomes hard. And some of the women that I know that have struggled were single women. And so it really just wasn't enough for them to have a full income, where if you had a partner who was helping the two of you live financially, I really think that's the issue.
We have such a nice center, and streetscape has been challenging because the stores are going on, and really as many of us as can go into the stores, please go in and put up with the remaining streetscape work. And then of course the pandemic presented another challenge, but we're so lucky that we have storefronts with people in them who are working, and stores with things to sell, whereas many communities across America have their main streets and their centers really truly empty. So it is something special here in Lexington where you can be part of a community. And I know the center committee works really hard, and the Retailers Association. So we timed this one because it's before Halloween. So for people who are listening of any age, it's fun to go down for the trick-or-treating in the center. The witches, we've dressed up as witches since the 300th anniversary. It's another way to participate is you don't have to have kids, is you can just be part of the small town feeling that we have. One thing that pops out for me is that on the one hand, we're a pretty large community with more than 30,000 people. And on the other hand, we have these communities within the community. So Kathy talked about it a little bit with some of the people who maybe live more isolated. And you mentioned Meals on Wheels, and Binita, we wanted to ask a little bit about that because you organized Meals on Wheels for some time. So it's another kind of community connection. Not everybody's involved, but if you could share a little bit about what that work has been like for you, what it's meant for you, and even how people might, or why they might want to get involved if they haven't yet been involved.
They're always looking for help, drivers, because the meals have to be taken to homes where they're delivered hot, and there are people there who are sitting all alone in their homes. They cannot go grocery shopping. They cannot cook. Some of them are wheelchair bound. And what we used to do is make them feel needed and wanted. And you service your elderly this way. And we used to have, I managed like 15, 20 locations around Lexington, Arlington, Lexington, Stowe, Maynard, Acton, Lincoln. And it's just gratifying knowing that I can serve an elder without wanting any money back. Just do the service. I did get paid, but it was not enough. It's a big business, but this community service is just beautiful. I did it as long as I could do, 18 years. And then my grandchildren needed my help. So I had to like choose between the two. So I helped in, I have 5 of them now. So all girls, they need my time. So I did this for some time. And the community service and volunteerism in America is amazing. If anybody can take the time to do a community work, that's beautiful. It's beautiful.
And you both kind of touched on it. You both manage marriages and businesses and
Yes.
community work. And that balance is something that most women struggle with, whether you have kids, pets, grandkids, other family members that you're helping provide care for. It's something that during the pandemic, it really came up in the news headlines is, wow, more than men, women in America fulfill multiple roles every day, all the time. Kathy, what were some, and you also had staff members who also, most were women, I believe, managing all those things. What were the kind of ways that you could support a staff and keep a store going? Because retail, small town retail is like 24/7, really. You can never like not be thinking about it. What are some strategies or advice you would give for someone who wanted to try this and embark on this experience?
I think you just have to surround yourself with people that have the same enthusiasm and passion as you do for whatever the business that you are involved in. And I was just always able to do that. We would have years where we would have fabulous high school kids. And if I could find 2 or 3 of them that were sophomores, and they would work sophomore, junior, senior. And that brought the younger community into the store. The older women were more, nurturing to maybe some of the tourists. It just has to do with surrounding yourself with good people and, quite frankly, paying them well. Most of these businesses can afford to pay a couple of dollars more per hour than maybe might be expected, but the loyalty and respect that these people had because they were appreciated not only personally but financially, that made a big difference. We always celebrated birthdays. We would even celebrate customers' birthdays if we knew we could do it. Just part of it's just knowing that you can be a community in your own store.
I love that. And Binita, thoughts from you about strategies about managing family and the many different projects you've been involved in. What would you give as advice for someone who is starting out?
Chalk out what you can give of yourself during the day. I was not working, it was just half a day's type of work from 9 to 12. You go there at your location, the food arrives from the catering people, then you make the boxes to be delivered. Then you have your drivers make them the route sheets. You give them the routes and they deliver the food. And then when they come back, if you have problem with somebody not there, then you cannot leave food there outside because it gets bad. And then we serve our seniors right in the senior center. And then there are a lot of volunteers in Lexington, I remember, and in Arlington, Drake Village. We used to have so many volunteers that were ready to wash the dishes, clean up the kitchen area, clean up the dining area, and everybody worked towards a common goal. And the goal was achieved when everybody works together for a common cause, work gets done. It shouldn't be just one person's job. So it worked very well. Very well.
And just as a reminder for anyone who has questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat bar or just raise your hand and Susan will see you if I can't see you. Another question that we wanted to check in on is thinking about the town now and the way it's changed. What are the changes that you think, well, let me ask it slightly differently. What would you say are your favorite things you have seen change in the last maybe 10 or 15 or 20 years? Because we've had structural change, we've, the face of some of the downtown has changed. The composition of our community has changed. Lots of things have changed. The tree committee's been very active. So what are some things that you see as just things you're really proud of? Binita,
Well,
I'll go to you first.
Yes, people have been some Indians, some Indians, sometimes they feel they have been discriminated against, because of their color or the way they dress or whatever. But I never felt I was discriminated. And but now the Lexington town is much more welcoming to the Indian immigration, like they're ready to help each other and they're so welcoming to a foreign person who has come to live in Lexington. Now it is just, I cannot say much about Lexington because it is just a beautiful town. I'm glad to be a citizen of Lexington because that has changed a lot. There, people are ready to adapt an Indian culture. So it makes your work a little easier. There are no blockades anywhere. You can just go do whatever you want to do.
I would agree. I would agree with Binita. The town has become very welcoming. All of the different celebrations of the different cultures, which we didn't have so much 15 years ago. Every season, there's many of them that go along, and some of them are more specific and some of them are broader. I love the fact that the whole center is becoming, because I've seen all the plans and was involved in some of them, how much more welcoming between the benches, the trees, the way the bump outs are going to be able to cross the street and not be, feel as dangerous. The lighting. I just feel like our community is coming together much better. I'm proud.
So a couple of just closing things, and it's first just like, thank you. It is so nice to spend time with both of you. It's just lovely to think about the collective creativity that you brought and all the different strategic things that you've helped share today. For our Girl Scouts who are in school right now, and we'll get to watch this later with their Scouts, if you were talking to a group of Girl Scouts and you were thinking about girlhood and as they look forward to being women, there's no question that across the country, women still face a lot of challenges. Women still earn less than men, period. It's just factually true. It's harder for women to access healthcare. There's fewer women in politics or running giant companies. There's still mountains to climb. What are some words of encouragement you would give to girls who are going to have to go out there and figure out what they want to do and how they're going to make their mark? Kathy, what are some things, maybe if there was a group of Girl Scouts here and they said, how do we end up in a banner someday? What should we do?
I think they have to be true to themselves. I think they have to learn to continue to support each other. I think that's a strength of women, and have less competitiveness, have more time to spend time with their friends and people of different cultures and learn and teach.
And Binita, how about you? What would you say to this group of Scouts?
Just go with the flow and go with what your heart desires and just keep doing. I know there are always roadblocks. Journey is never easy. And, when you're a teenager, you have, your hormones and this and that. You get angry very quickly. You get upset very quickly. But as you grow, just have little patience. Have little patience that there's a light at the end of the tunnel and These experiences that you have growing up will help you reach your goal.
In the monument, the monument is called Something is Being Done. And both of you really exemplify many things that you have done. And it is a reminder for all of us that whatever area you're in, whatever your passion is, you can make a really big difference in this community. And bringing the communities together is an incredible gift, clearly, for all of us. Next month in our speaker series, we will get to spend some time with Melanie Lynn and with Carla Fortman, who Kathy did mention earlier today. And over the coming months, you'll be able to look at LexSeeHer.com, both to see who's up next in the speaker series and also to follow the work on the monument. And like I said, hopefully maybe next week. If you would like to subscribe to get the newsletter, I'm going to just put the website LexSeeHer.com into the message bar, and you can email lexmonument@gmail.com if you'd like to get the newsletter. It's only about once a month, but our goal is to make sure that as Meredith Bergman is sculpting the monument, people who want to be able to be connected and hear about, like, when is the clay going on? How's the bronze work? What is that process like? That is something that is open for anyone in Lexington to follow along and stay in touch with that process. We will be at the Community Endowment of Lexington's event this Saturday, October 22nd, and we'll have a table there. We're so grateful to them for creating a space where we can all come together. We thank everyone who made Discovery Day possible. We met a whole bunch of new people there and look forward to connecting with everyone. Thank you so much, Kathy and Binita, and thank you to
Thank
Sue.
you.
Thank you
you
for honoring us.
Thank you. And thank you to all of our guests who are with us today and anyone who's listening to the recording. And thanks again to Cary Library. Helen Lou's not here and Matthew, but Susan, it's been lovely to work with you today. And we'll turn it back over to you. And we'll all just, maybe we can unmute for a quick moment, everybody. Just go ahead and we'll give our.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Let me spotlight myself. I'm new to Lexington. I just started here at the library in December, which actually, it's almost been a year now, which is crazy. But so it was so nice getting to hear about both of you and everything that you've done for the town and the community. Thank you everyone so much for tuning in. Like Jessie said, we will have more on next month, and make sure that you tune in for that.